Thanks, Tom. Hey, everybody, back again. Hope everybody's fighting through the post-lunch lull and hanging in there. Our next keynote has joined us from her very busy morning, which she may or may not wish to talk about. Jeanette Manfra is the Assistant Secretary for the Office of Cybersecurity and Communications, National Protection and Programs Directorate for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. In this role, she serves as the Chief Cybersecurity Official for the Department of Homeland Security and supports its mission of strengthening the security and resilience of the nation's critical infrastructure. May I introduce to you Jeanette Manfra.
Thank you, Chris, for that kind introduction. And I feel like I may have had my fill of questions and answers today, but hopefully we'll still have some time. I wanted to make sure to get here. For those of you who don't know who he's referring to, I've spent the morning on the Hill. Secretary Nielsen and I were testifying on election security. So appreciate Billington for setting this up, for moving some things around so that I could still get here. And importantly, both Congress and you all have decided not to make this a snow day. And so I really appreciate those of you that braved the interesting DC spring weather to come and participate in this really important summit and in the topic of international cybersecurity. The internet and its supporting ecosystem has been an engine of commerce, innovation, and a free and open platform of expression. But continued insecurity and instability in cyberspace directly jeopardize this. International cyberspace is growing more crowded, active, and dangerous, a trend that threatens the long-term integrity of international security and order. We, as a global community, must take immediate actions to combat these trends. As many of you know, DHS is responsible for protecting our nation's federal civilian networks and collaborating with other federal agencies, our state and local governments, as well as the private sector to defend against cyber threats. This will continue to be our core priority. Ensuring the security, availability, and continuity of federal networks helps ensure the full functioning of government services in times of calm and in times of crisis. A cornerstone of Homeland Security and a critical component to U.S. support of allies and international partners. But our efforts cannot end there. Threats in cyberspace, as we all know, are not bound by national borders. Our networks and the critical infrastructure they support are integrated into a global cyber ecosystem. This reality makes our usually domestic mission inherently international. Multinational firms, talent, goods, and services are perpetually in motion and transcending national boundaries. We must begin to think in terms of global digital public health, where the decisions that each of us makes has the potential to affect us all. Simply put, cybersecurity cannot and must not end at national borders. Our risk transcends them, and so must we. In this environment, DHS engages with partners and allies internationally in support of our domestic cybersecurity mission and to help strengthen the resilience of the global cyber environment upon which we all rely. First, we partner with key allies to enhance operational coordination and information sharing among national computer security incident response teams to help protect critical networks, in part by raising awareness of cyber threats and sharing cybersecurity best practices. Second, we support efforts to build international capacity to address cyber risks. An important part of this work includes emphasizing the need for collaborative efforts between the public and private sectors to manage these shared risks globally. And finally, we work closely with our federal departments and agencies as part of a whole-of-government approach, notably with the Departments of State, Defense, and Justice, many of them were represented today, to engage with our counterparts abroad so that we are reflecting common U.S. policies. I'd like to take some time to focus on a few areas of challenge and opportunity we both face in ensuring the security of our homeland and in working with our global partners. Perhaps one of the most pressing challenges we face are the risks inherent in an increasingly global supply chain. As these technological supply chains grow more global and our critical infrastructure more connected, our systemic risk grows exponentially. While the global production of information communications technology provides us with more cost-effective and efficient technologies, it also increases our exposure to malicious cyber actors. Movement of production outside the U.S. has led to growing concerns associated with foreign ownership, control, manipulation, or influence over items that are purchased by the government and those that are used in or connected to critical infrastructure and mission-essential systems. Like the private sector, the federal government is highly dependent on vendors and integrators of commercial technology to accomplish its missions. And as a result, we know that the cyber supply chain is a significant source of risk, and the federal government must do better to manage this third-party risk. To help manage these risks, DHS is working with public, private, and international communities, as well as standards organizations, to develop and encourage the adoption of sound software development and acquisition processes and practices. But understanding the problem is fundamental. Risk assessment is always a difficult task. It requires insight into underlying system dependencies, visibility into an often opaque supply chain process, and a clear understanding of the threat. We work closely with the intelligence community to build a clear picture of threats we and private industry face, and we work to declassify and disseminate these insights as broadly as possible to our stakeholders. But that is only one half of the equation. We rely on the participation of the private sector and international partners to understand the systemic vulnerabilities they face so that we can build a comprehensive picture of national and international risk. We cannot continue to chase phantom risk, the unbounded worst-case scenarios of our risk calculations. Our efforts must be focused by hard evidence and data, grounded on a direct and accurate understanding of both threats and vulnerabilities, nationally and globally. There are simply too many potentialities to account for in a diverse and active threat environment. This, however, requires better and broader engagement, and that is the key challenge. We must build capacity on systemic risk analysis and widen our scope of visibility into national and the international cyber ecosystem, partnering with private and international components. We need to develop better and more useful frameworks from which to even understand system critical infrastructure risk, let alone the supply chain problem. Overcoming these challenges is a near-term necessity. Finally, maintaining our status as a trusted authority in the U.S. government is paramount in everything that we do. It is the very foundation of our engagement. The threats posed by nation-state actors continue to escalate. Growing modernization and increasing technological reach have made it far easier for more mature national actors to increase the scope and scale of their attacks, and less developed but capable nations to quickly build a credible cyber force and join the fray. In the face of U.S. strength, our most capable adversaries have stepped up efforts to conduct gray zone operations in cyberspace, to achieve objectives in areas where they are unable or unwilling to compete normally. The U.S. is not alone in being affected by these attacks. Election interference, intellectual property theft, critical infrastructure disruption, indiscriminate targeting and attack, and cyber-enabled theft are each examples we have seen in recent years, and they are growing in frequency and scale. Failure to forcefully respond to these behaviors, which are unacceptable and destabilizing, runs the risk of setting a normative precedent that they can be conducted with impunity and emboldens adversaries to escalate their efforts, including closer to undefined red lines. As nations continue to develop and build cyber capabilities of their own, failure to respond threatens long-term security. In an environment that is increasingly crowded and volatile, we must move from a notion of traditional deterrence applied to cyberspace to one where we are shaping the strategic threat environment, molding it towards systemic security, and more importantly, long-term stability. This objective is by necessity an international endeavor with multiple lines of effort. The U.S. government has worked with domestic partners, such as law enforcement and international partners, to publicly attribute malicious cyber activity. Efforts to address these activities in a collaborative manner include our response to NotPetya, WannaCry, and recent activities targeting U.S. critical infrastructure sectors. Attribution and, quote, naming and shaming of those responsible for unacceptable behavior in cyberspace is key, as long as it is followed by concrete action. While it appeals to our sense of justice to call out perpetrators by name, it provides little incentive to change behavior if we are not imposing additional cost. To this end, last Thursday, our department issued a joint technical alert in collaboration with the FBI, providing information on a multi-stage intrusion campaign by Russian government cyber actors who targeted U.S. government entities as well as multiple U.S. critical infrastructure sectors, including the energy, nuclear, commercial facilities, water, aviation, and critical manufacturing. This effort to attribute was paired with financial sanctions, indemnifying this behavior and calling it out as unacceptable and irresponsible. Our department and the FBI concluded that these cyber actors staged malware, conducted spear phishing, and gained remote access into energy sector networks. After obtaining access, these cyber actors conducted network reconnaissance, moved laterally, and collected information pertaining to industrial control systems. While we ensured that they failed to access these critical systems, this type of behavior is the type of destabilizing behavior that I'm referring to. By sharing this information with our partners and the public, we hope to enable network defenders to identify and reduce exposure to malicious cyber activity carried out by Russian, North Korean, and other actors. Perhaps more importantly, by pairing them with cost imposition, we hope to send a clear message that unacceptable and irresponsible behavior in cyberspace will not be tolerated. We know that we cannot secure our homeland alone. Cybersecurity is a shared responsibility. We all play a part in keeping the internet safe. I want to close with information sharing. We've talked about it a lot today, and we've talked about it a lot previously. Information sharing is a mechanism to achieve much of what we're talking about. It's a mechanism to get to more automated defenses, and it's a mechanism to get to a better understanding of what the threat is doing. And it's a priority if we are going to secure the public health of our digital ecosystem. Identifying a threat vector in one area potentially allows us to inoculate defenders against it in all areas, but only if we are fully leveraging information sharing at scale and speed that cyberspace enables. As we work with our partners at home and abroad on information sharing and capacity building, we also seek to share information quickly and accurately. To that end, more than 200 organizations are connected to our automated indicator sharing server, including 11 international partners. Setting interoperability and common standards for threat information sharing, however, is key. We cannot let easily surmountable barriers prevent our ability to be agile and responsive in responding to the threat. Our AIS program, for example, utilizes Styx taxi protocols, which is a cyber threat intelligence exchange effort launched in 2012 and now governed by OASIS, a not-for-profit international standards development organization. We continue to support OASIS in its effort to accelerate the adoption of Styx and taxi and improve upon it as a global standard. Earlier this year, the European Union made the very important decision to identify these standards for use in public procurements as their standard as well. The power of industry-coordinated and internationally developed standards is significant, and we need to continue to leverage those. In addition to our operational coordination and information sharing efforts, my office seeks to make cyberspace and our cyber infrastructure more resilient by participating in a range of internet policy fora, whether that is the International Telecommunications Union, the World Summit on the Information Society, and the Internet Governance Forum, among others. It is through efforts like these that we seek to raise the collective security of our global cyber ecosystem. We make it way too easy for attackers when we operate independently. Our adversaries are not distinguishing among us, so neither should we. Continued focus in this area can be a rallying point for building up collective defenses, and I am encouraged by our efforts to date. That being said, ahead of us lie some great challenges, but I believe it offers us even greater opportunities. We have made great progress over the past several years, largely due to robust partnerships and engagements across the international spectrum, and our continued collaboration will be key to our success going forward. Thank you so much for the opportunity to address you all here today, and I do look forward to continuing to work with you.
Assistant Secretary Manfra, thank you very much for joining us after your hearing on the Hill. We greatly appreciate your time and your insights here.